Okay, today we're going to be talking about the altitude on hypotenuse theorems. So basically we're going to figure out which similar triangles are created when you draw an altitude to the hypotenuse of a right triangle. And then we're going to learn some shortcuts that we can use to find the missing sides using these theorems. Okay, so let's first identify the similar triangles formed when we draw our altitude to our hypotenuse of our right triangle. So first we can see this right triangle, triangle BDC, then we have triangle CDA, and these two are similar to each other, and then we have our big triangle ABC. So all three triangles are similar. So we can take a closer look at these right here, and we'll draw them all so they are all facing the same direction. Okay, so first we have triangle CBD, and then we have triangle ACD, and these are both similar to triangle ABC, the big triangle. Okay, so next let's take a look at the actual theorem. So this says if an altitude is drawn to the hypotenuse of a right triangle, then the two triangles formed are similar to the given right triangle and to each other. So this is the three triangles we were just looking at. So the two smaller triangles are similar to each other and to the big right triangle that we started with. And then we have the altitude to the hypotenuse is the mean proportional between the segments of the hypotenuse. So basically the altitude is the mean proportional to the two smaller legs that make up the big hypotenuse. And then finally, either leg of the given right triangle is the mean proportional between the hypotenuse of the given right triangle and the segment of the hypotenuse adjacent to that leg. Okay, so we'll look at these three equations closely here. And they can be summarized this way. So this first one is basically saying the altitude is the mean proportional between the segments of the hypotenuse. So we're looking at the altitude here, and it's the mean proportional between the segments of the hypotenuse. So that's x and y. So we have h over x equals y over h, which we know simplifies to h squared equals xy. And then our next one is x over b equals b over c, which we know simplifies to b squared equals x times c. Okay, so this one is basically talking about the smaller right triangle in relation to the big right triangle. And we can see that we have our small leg x over our small hypotenuse b, and then we have our big leg from our big right triangle b again over our big hypotenuse. Okay, so let's look at that with the next one. So now we're going to be looking at the other small triangle formed when we draw the hypotenuse. So we have our smaller leg y right here over our smaller hypotenuse, so the hypotenuse of the smaller triangle A, equals the big leg, which is still A, because this is the big leg of our big triangle, over the big hypotenuse C, so over our big hypotenuse, which we know simplifies to a squared equals y times c. So again, a is the mean proportional between y times c. Alright, so now let's look at a example problem. So the first thing we're going to do here is solve for x. So we're looking at our altitude. So we know that x squared, so the altitude squared equals the corresponding parts of the hypotenuse of the big right triangle. So that would be 4 times 5. Okay, so then we have x equals 2 root 5. Alright, so now we want to solve for a. So we're going to be looking at a right here. And we can say that the a is the middle leg. And a squared equals 4. So the corresponding segment of the big hypotenuse times the whole hypotenuse. So that's 9. So then we get a squared equals 36. So a equals 6. Alright, and then lastly we're going to solve for b. So we have b squared equals the corresponding part of the segment of the whole hypotenuse, so that's 5, times the whole hypotenuse again, which is 9, of the big triangle. So then we have b equals 3 root 5. Okay, so now we can go on to number 2. So again, we're going to solve for x first, our altitude. So we have x squared equals 4 times 6. So I got 6 by doing the whole hypotenuse minus the segment that we know. So we know that this segment is going to be 6. And then we have so x equals 2 root 6. Alright, so then looking at b, we're going to solve it the same way we did before. So we have b squared equals its corresponding segment of the big hypotenuse times the big hypotenuse. So b equals 2 root 10. And then lastly, we're going to have side a. So a squared equals 6 times 10. A equals 2 square root 15. Alright, so now on number 3. I want you to pause the video for a second and try this problem on your own. Okay, so the first step in solving this problem is we're actually going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for b. Alright, so we want to do 5 squared plus 3 root 5 squared equals b squared. So then we should have 70 equals b squared, which will give us b equal to square root of 70. Okay, so then we're going to use that, and we're going to solve for x next. So we're going to do b squared equals 5 times 5 plus x. So we substitute in our b. So we have square root of 70 squared equals 25 plus 5x, which we can simplify to 45 equals 5x. So then we know x equals 9. Okay, and then our last step is to use that to solve for side a. So we know that x equals 9. So we can say that a squared equals 9 times 14. So then we have a equals the square root of 126, which equals 3 root 14. Okay. Number 4, I want you to again pause the video and try this problem on your own. Okay, so for this problem, you should have gotten x equals 2 root 10, a equals 8, and b equals 2 root 26. Alright, number 5. Alright, number 5 we're going to go through pretty quickly here. So we have to first solve for side A, so we can say 7 squared equals a times 12. Then we have 49 equals 12a. Okay, we have 7 squared equals a times a big hypotenuse. So to finish that one, we have a equals 49 divided by 12. Right, and then we can use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for x. So we have x squared plus 7 squared equals 12 squared. And when you simplify that, you get x equals square root of 95. And then finally, we'll use our theorem to solve for side B, plugging in x. So we're going to do x squared first, which we know is root 95. So we have the square root of 95 squared equals b times 12. When you simplify that, you get b equals 95 over 12. Okay? And then the last thing I want you to do is try number 6 on your own. This one's a little bit more difficult, and we are going to talk about this problem in class. So that concludes the 9.3 notes.